The piercing wail of police sirens shattered the pre-dawn silence in Dubai's exclusive Emirates Hills community. Red and blue lights reflected off the marble facades of multimillion-dollar villas, as emergency vehicles converged on Villa 42, a sprawling 6-bedroom mansion overlooking the golf course. Inside, a scene that would shock even veteran investigators was unfolding. James Mitchell, 45, a prominent international banker, lay dead in his home office, while his wife Sarah, still in her designer nightgown, sat calmly in the living room, hands folded in her lap. British expatriate wife murders banking executive husband in Dubai villa, the headlines would scream the next morning. But the story that would emerge in the following weeks would reveal a web of lies, betrayal, and a double life that spanned 2 continents. The perfect expatriate life that Sarah and James Mitchell had carefully curated on social media was about to unravel in the most spectacular way. Sarah Mitchell, née Walker, was born into a middle-class family in London's Hampstead neighbourhood in 1985. The daughter of a secondary school teacher and a librarian, Sarah showed remarkable drive and intelligence from an early age. Her teachers at the prestigious North London Collegiate School often remarked on her ability to excel both academically and socially. This combination of sharp intellect and natural charm would later serve her well in the cutthroat world of international finance. After graduating with first-class honours from the London School of Economics, Sarah quickly established herself as a rising star in investment banking. By her late 20s, she had already made a name for herself at Goldman Sachs, known for her keen analytical mind and ability to close complex deals. Her colleagues remembered her as focused, ambitious, and always impeccably presented. Sarah was the kind of person who made everything look effortless, recalled Maria Torres, a former colleague. She could work on a multimillion-dollar deal all day and still show up looking fresh for client drinks in the evening. It was at the 2012 Global Financial Summit in Singapore where Sarah first met James Mitchell. James, then a senior executive at HSBC's International Division, caught her attention during a panel discussion on emerging markets. Their eyes met across the conference room, remembered David Chen, who was sitting next to Sarah. It was like something out of a movie. James, tall and distinguished with prematurely grey hair that only added to his charm, approached Sarah during the evening networking event. Their conversation about market volatility in Asian markets quickly turned personal, and they ended up talking until the venue staff began stacking chairs around them. Their romance progressed with the same intensity and precision that characterized their professional lives. Weekend trips to Paris, holidays in the Maldives, and elaborate dates filled their courtship. James proposed 6 months later on a private yacht in the Mediterranean, presenting Sarah with a flawless 5-carat diamond ring. The wedding, held at the Burj Al Arab in Dubai, was a lavish affair that made the society pages. 200 guests flew in from around the world to witness their union, with the bride in a custom-made Vera Wang gown and the groom in a Tom Ford tuxedo. The newlyweds settled into Dubai's expatriate life with ease. James's position as regional director for HSBC's private banking division provided them with a lifestyle most could only dream of. Their villa in Emirates Hills, purchased for $12 million, became known for hosting elegant dinner parties where Dubai's elite would gather. Sarah, who had transferred to Goldman Sachs's Dubai office, quickly established herself in the local social scene. Together, they were the golden couple of Dubai's expatriate community. Their Instagram feeds painted a picture of perfection. Sarah and James at Royal Ascot, mixing with British aristocracy, charity galas at the Amani Hotel, weekend desert safaris in their Range Rover, holidays in the Seychelles. Their friends often commented on how in love they still seemed, even after years of marriage. They were always touching, always laughing at each other's jokes, said Rebecca Henderson, a close friend of Sarah's. They were the couple we all wanted to be. The only shadow in their seemingly perfect life was their struggle with infertility. After 3 years of marriage, Sarah and James began IVF treatments at Dubai's top fertility clinic. The process was emotionally draining, but friends noted how it seemed to bring them closer together. Sarah later confided in Rebecca that James had been incredibly supportive during their failed attempts, never pressuring her and always remaining optimistic about their future. Their property portfolio grew alongside their social status. Beyond their Emirates Hills villa, they acquired a penthouse in Dubai Marina, a ski chalet in Switzerland, and a pied-à-terre in London's Mayfair. James's expertise in international banking proved lucrative in Dubai's booming real estate market, and their investments seemed to multiply effortlessly. But beneath the glossy surface, cracks were beginning to appear. The first signs were subtle, so subtle that Sarah would later question whether she had imagined them. James's business trips became more frequent and longer in duration. While this wasn't unusual in international banking, something felt different. His usual pattern of daily video calls while traveling became sporadic. He cited poor internet connections in various locations, yet his social media showed him in luxury hotels known for their excellent connectivity. Financial discrepancies began to surface. Small at first, unexplained charges at restaurants on days when James was supposedly in board meetings, hotel bookings in cities he hadn't mentioned visiting. Sarah, with her background in finance, noticed these irregularities but initially dismissed them as corporate expenses or accounting errors. Then came the password changes on their shared accounts, with James citing increased cybersecurity requirements at work. His personality began to shift in subtle ways. The man who had once shared every detail of his day became increasingly vague about his whereabouts. He established new email accounts, explaining them as necessary for client confidentiality. Their once spontaneous dinner conversations became stilted, with James often appearing distracted, constantly checking his phone. Friends started noticing changes too. James used to be so present at our gatherings, noted Michael Chang, a fellow banker. Suddenly he was always stepping away to take calls, always had an excuse to leave early. Their famous dinner parties became less frequent, and when they did occur, James often appeared preoccupied or arrived late, citing work commitments. The unexplained absences multiplied. Weekend trips to London for emergency board meetings that Sarah later discovered had never been scheduled. Last-minute flights to Singapore that didn't appear on his corporate credit card statements. Documents related to their property investments, which they had always maintained meticulously together, went missing from their home office. Sarah's growing unease was compounded by strange occurrences. Calls that went silent when she answered, text messages that arrived at odd hours and were quickly explained away. Credit card statements showed purchases at high-end jewelry stores that never materialized as gifts. The man who had once been an open book to her was becoming a mystery. As 2023 drew to a close, Sarah Mitchell found herself living in a state of constant anxiety, analyzing every conversation, every gesture, every unexplained absence. The perfect life she had built with James was beginning to feel like an elaborate facade. Little did she know that what she had noticed was merely the tip of an iceberg of deception that would ultimately lead to a bloody confrontation in their perfect Dubai home. The strange phone calls were about to be explained. The missing documents would soon make terrible sense. And the truth about James Mitchell's absences would shake the foundations of everything Sarah thought she knew about her marriage. But for now, she remained in their marble palace, surrounded by the trappings of success, trying to convince herself that she was imagining things. The real nightmare was yet to begin. The decision to hire a private investigator wasn't one Sarah Mitchell made lightly. Each small doubt, each unexplained absence, each forgotten anniversary had piled up like grains of sand until they finally tipped the scales of her certainty. As she sat in the discreet office of Hassan al-Rashid, a former Dubai police detective turned private investigator, her manicured nails dug into the leather armrests of her chair. "I need to know what my husband does when he's supposedly at work," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Hassan, having handled numerous cases involving Dubai's expatriate community, recognized the familiar signs of a marriage crumbling under the weight of suspicion. What he couldn't know was that this case would become one of the most complex and tragic he'd ever encounter. The investigation began with surgical precision. Hassan assembled his elite team, former intelligence officers, digital forensics experts, and financial investigators. They deployed a sophisticated network of surveillance techniques, combining old-school physical tracking with cutting-edge digital monitoring. James Mitchell's daily routines were mapped with meticulous detail, every deviation from his official schedule noted and cross-referenced. The first red flag appeared within days. After leaving his office at HSBC's regional headquarters in downtown Dubai, James's Mercedes took an unexpected turn. Instead of heading to the business dinner he'd told Sarah about, He wound through the quieter streets of Jumeirah, eventually stopping at Al Seif Towers, a luxury apartment complex known for its discretion and high-profile residents. "We have something," Hassan told Sarah 3 days later, spreading photographs across his desk. The images showed James entering the building through a private entrance, carrying shopping bags from high-end boutiques. Security footage revealed he visited this location 3 to 4 times every week, always following the same careful route to avoid main roads with traffic cameras. But it was the balcony photograph that first broke Sarah's composure. The image showed James, relaxed in casual clothes she'd never seen, holding a young child. 2 other children played at his feet, their features unmistakably similar to his. "The twins appear to be about 3 years old," Hassan explained gently. "The younger one is approximately 14 months. The property investigation revealed the apartment had been purchased through a shell company called Desert Rose Holdings 5 years earlier. The paper trail led to a series of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, carefully structured to avoid detection. Bank statements showed regular transfers maintaining a lifestyle that paralleled Sarah's own: private school fees, luxury car payments, designer shopping sprees. Digital forensics unveiled a separate email account, multiple social media profiles under slight variations of James's name, and a pattern of careful digital compartmentalization that spoke of long-term planning. But it was the discovery of the marriage certificate that shattered Sarah's world completely. Filed with Dubai's Islamic Affairs Department was a legal document showing James's marriage to Amara Khalil, performed 4 years ago. The certificate listed James under his legal name but included his conversion to Islam, a requirement for marrying a Muslim woman in the UAE. The document was legitimate, properly notarized, and bore official government seals. Amara Khalil emerged as a figure far more formidable than Sarah had initially imagined. Born into one of Dubai's prominent merchant families, she held a PhD in chemical engineering from Imperial College London and served as a research director at Dubai Science Park. Her family's connections in Dubai's business community had initially helped James establish key banking relationships. The irony that her own husband's success might have been partially built on his relationship with his second wife wasn't lost on Sarah. Hassan's team pieced together Amara's background through careful investigation. She came from a family that perfectly straddled Dubai's traditional values and modern ambitions. Her father, Abdullah Khalil, sat on the boards of several government-linked companies. Her mother, while maintaining a traditional public profile, was quietly influential in Dubai's education sector. James had met Amara at a renewable energy conference in Abu Dhabi 6 years ago, just 2 years into his marriage with Sarah. Their Islamic marriage took place during one of his supposed business trips to Singapore. The apartment purchase, the births of the children, even family holidays, all had been orchestrated during James's increasingly frequent absences. The children's existence hit Sarah particularly hard. Twins Zara and Yasmin, aged 3, attended the same prestigious British curriculum school that Sarah and James had once discussed for their own future children. 1-year-old Sophia had been born during a period when James had claimed to be stuck in Hong Kong due to COVID-19 travel restrictions. Amara's life with James was extensively documented on private social media accounts that Hassan's team had managed to access. The photos showed a different version of James, relaxed in traditional Emirati dress at family gatherings, teaching his twins to swim, cradling his youngest daughter in the hospital just months ago. The stark contrast to his polished, Western executive persona in Sarah's world was jarring. The second family's lifestyle, while luxurious, had a distinctly different character from Sarah's. Where Sarah and James's life centered on international glamour and social status, James's life with Amara was deeply integrated into Dubai's local community. Their apartment, though opulent, was chosen for its proximity to both Amara's family compound and the children's school. Regular gatherings with extended family, religious observations, and local traditions filled their calendar. Amara's family's involvement added another layer of complexity. Her father had apparently welcomed James into their fold, helping him navigate the cultural and business landscape of the UAE. Photos showed James participating in family celebrations, desert camps, and religious festivities. He had seamlessly adapted to the cultural expectations of his second life, learning Arabic and observing Islamic customs. The financial arrangements supporting this double life proved to be even more elaborate than initially suspected. James had created a complex web of offshore companies and trusts, moving money through multiple jurisdictions to maintain both households. The discovery of these financial structures led Hassan's team to an even more disturbing revelation. Some of the transactions showed patterns consistent with money laundering. As the investigation deepened, evidence of larger financial crimes emerged. James had apparently been using his position at HSBC to facilitate complex fraud schemes. Shell companies similar to those used to purchase the Jumeirah apartment were involved in suspicious transactions across Asia and the Middle East. Client funds had been diverted through a labyrinth of offshore accounts, with millions seemingly vanishing into untraceable investments. Sarah's world collapsed as each new piece of evidence emerged. She stopped sleeping, lost weight rapidly, and began having panic attacks. Her perfect life, she realized, had been built on an elaborate foundation of lies. Friends noticed her withdrawal from social activities, but she couldn't bring herself to explain. How could she admit that her sophisticated, successful husband had constructed an entirely separate life less than 30 minutes away? The investigation uncovered more than just the second family. There were other women too, business trips that coincided with meetings with the same women in different cities, hotel bookings under aliases, gifts purchased and sent to addresses in London, Singapore, and Hong Kong. James's betrayal wasn't just a second family. It was a pattern of systematic deception that spanned continents. As Sarah delved deeper into their financial records, she discovered hidden assets she'd never known about. Properties in Thailand and Malaysia, registered under different company names. Investment accounts in Switzerland and Luxembourg. Most disturbingly, she found evidence of massive financial fraud within James's division at HSBC, fake investment schemes, inflated returns, and misappropriated client funds. The discovery of multiple passports in James's private office safe, some under slightly different names, suggested connections to even darker activities. These weren't merely second identities for managing his double life. They were tools for moving money and evading detection. The sophisticated nature of these documents pointed to connections with professional criminal networks. Sarah's mental health deteriorated rapidly as the scale of James's deception became clear. She began recording everything obsessively: times, dates, locations, transactions. Her home office walls became covered with documents, photos, and sticky notes, mapping out James's elaborate deceptions. She barely ate, spending hours staring at Hassan's surveillance footage, watching her husband move effortlessly between his two lives. The final straw came when Sarah discovered James had been systematically moving their joint assets into accounts she couldn't access. Future plans found in his encrypted emails revealed his intention to transfer to HSBC's Hong Kong office, but not with her. The transfer request mentioned his family, Amara and the children, would be joining him. Sarah realized she was not only being betrayed but was being slowly erased from his life. In her darkest moments, alone in their vast villa, Sarah began to plan. She knew confronting James would be dangerous, not just emotionally, but potentially physically. The evidence of his criminal connections suggested he was capable of far more than just marital infidelity. She gathered documents, made copies, stored evidence in secure locations. She contacted a lawyer specializing in international divorce cases. But as she prepared for a legal confrontation, something inside Sarah snapped. The weight of the betrayal, the humiliation of discovering her entire marriage had been a sophisticated lie, the rage at realizing the children she had desperately wanted, James had fathered with another woman, it all became too much. The carefully gathered evidence and legal preparations gave way to a darker plan. On the night of February 15, 2024, Sarah sat in their home office, surrounded by the evidence of her husband's betrayal, and made a decision that would shock Dubai's expatriate community and make headlines around the world. The perfect life she had thought she was living was about to end in violence, forever changing multiple families and exposing a web of deceit that would have international repercussions. February 15, 2024, began like any other day in Dubai's exclusive Emirates Hills community. The morning sun cast long shadows across manicured lawns as domestic staff arrived at their employers' villas. Security cameras captured Sarah Mitchell's Mercedes leaving the compound at 7:15 a.m., following her usual route to Goldman Sachs's office in the DIFC. James Mitchell departed 30 minutes later, his own Mercedes heading toward HSBC headquarters. What the security footage didn't reveal was that Sarah never made it to her office. Instead, she drove to Festival City Mall, parked her car, and took a taxi back to Emirates Hills. She entered the villa through the service entrance at 8:45 a.m., careful to avoid the main security cameras. The household staff had been given the day off, an unusual occurrence that would later raise questions among investigators. Throughout the day, Sarah methodically prepared for what she had planned. Security footage showed her making 3 separate trips to different hardware stores across Dubai, paying cash each time. Phone records would later reveal a series of calls between Sarah and James, their final communications painting a picture of calculated deception. "Darling, I'm not feeling well. Could you come home early today?" Sarah's voice on the recorded line was perfectly calibrated, concerned enough to warrant attention, but not so distressed as to cause alarm. James's response was typically distracted. "I have meetings until 6, but I'll try to wrap up early." At 4:47 p.m., Sarah sent a text message that would later be key evidence. "I've made your favorite dinner. Please come home soon. We need to talk." James replied at 5:03 p.m., "Leaving office now. Be home in 30. The security cameras at the main gate captured James's car entering Emirates Hills at 5:42 p.m. Neighbors would later recall nothing unusual about his arrival. The same car, the same time, the same routine they had observed countless times before. But the interior cameras of Villa 42, which Sarah had deliberately disabled, would tell no tales of what happened next. The reconstruction of events, based on forensic evidence and Sarah's eventual confession, painted a chilling picture. James entered through the main door, calling out as he always did. The house was unusually quiet, the normal sounds of staff moving about notably absent. He found Sarah in his home office, sitting calmly behind his desk. On the desk lay evidence of his double life, photographs of Amara and the children, bank statements showing his hidden accounts, copies of his second marriage certificate. But what James couldn't see was the 9mm Glock pistol Sarah had acquired through connections she'd made during her investigation. "We need to talk about Amara," Sarah said quietly. The name hung in the air between them. Security guard Mohammed Rahman, patrolling the street outside, would later report hearing raised voices from the villa around 6 p.m., though this was not unusual in the neighborhood. What happened next was reconstructed through forensic evidence. The first shot was fired from approximately 3 meters away, striking James in the chest. He stumbled backward, knocking over a Mont Blanc pen holder that would later be found under his body. The second shot, fired from closer range, struck his head. The third shot, seemingly unnecessary but telling of Sarah's state of mind, was fired into his heart at point-blank range. The villa's soundproofed walls muffled the gunshots, but the security system's vibration sensors registered 3 distinct impacts. At 6:13 p.m., Sarah placed a call to emergency services. Her voice, recorded by the dispatcher, was eerily calm. "I've just shot my husband. Villa 42, Emirates Hills. Please send the police." The first responders arrived within 7 minutes. Officer Khalid Al-Mansouri, first on the scene, found the front door open and Sarah sitting in the living room, the gun placed on the coffee table before her. James's body lay in the office, surrounded by scattered documents, the evidence of his deception mixed with his blood. The crime scene investigators arrived at 6:45 p.m., led by Captain Fatima Al-Hashemi, one of Dubai Police's most experienced forensic experts. The scene was methodically documented. 3 9mm shell casings, blood spatter patterns indicating the sequence of shots, and the scattered documentation of James's double life creating a bizarre backdrop to the violence. News of the shooting spread quickly through Emirates Hills' tight-knit expatriate community. Residents gathered behind the police cordon, watching as crime scene technicians moved in and out of the villa. The darkness was punctuated by camera flashes and the rotating lights of police vehicles. Sarah's behavior during the immediate aftermath struck many as bizarre. She remained calm, almost detached, as she was led to the police car. When asked if she needed to collect any personal items, she replied, "Everything I need to know is in the office." She made no attempt to contact a lawyer, family, or friends. The initial police interrogation, conducted at Dubai police station, revealed a woman who had meticulously planned her actions. Sarah provided detailed accounts of her discoveries about James's second family, the financial crimes, and her decision to confront him. Her statement, recorded over 6 hours, was remarkably coherent for someone who had just committed murder. "I couldn't let him leave us both," she told investigators. "He was planning to disappear to Hong Kong with her and the children. All these years of lies, of watching me go through fertility treatments while he had children with her. I couldn't let him win." The crime scene investigation continued through the night. Forensics teams discovered Sarah had lined the office walls with plastic sheeting before the confrontation, suggesting premeditation. The murder weapon was traced to a black market arms dealer in Deira, though Sarah refused to reveal how she had made the connection. Media outlets descended on Emirates Hills within hours. The story had everything: wealth, betrayal, a secret second family, and murder in Dubai's most exclusive community. Headlines around the world blared variations of "Expatriate wife murders banker husband after discovering secret family." The community's reaction was mixed. Some neighbors expressed shock, describing Sarah and James as the perfect couple. Others, particularly those who had noticed changes in Sarah's behavior over recent months, admitted to suspecting something was wrong. The revelation of James's second family and financial crimes added layers of complexity to what might have been a simple crime of passion. Within hours of the murder, both families were drawn into the vortex of the investigation. Sarah's parents flew in from London, arriving to find their daughter in police custody and their son-in-law's crimes splashed across international media. James's family, struggling to process both his death and the revelations about his double life, issued a brief statement requesting privacy. Amara, James's second wife, went into seclusion with her children. Her prominent family's connections meant the media couldn't get close, but sources reported she had been unaware of James's first marriage. The discovery that she too had been deceived added another tragic dimension to the case. The autopsy, conducted at Dubai Police's forensic laboratory, confirmed the sequence of events Sarah had described. The first shot would have been fatal within minutes, making the subsequent shots clear evidence of intent rather than self-defense. Toxicology reports showed no substances in James's system, indicating he had been clear-headed when he arrived home. Sarah's arrest processing was handled with unusual discretion, owing to the high-profile nature of the case and the sensitive financial information involved. Regular updates were sent to both British and UAE diplomatic channels. The evidence collection expanded beyond the murder itself to include the extensive documentation of James's financial crimes, which now involved multiple international jurisdictions. Initial legal proceedings began within 48 hours. Sarah's first court appearance was closed to the public, but court records show she was charged with premeditated murder, a capital offense in the UAE. The prosecution presented evidence of planning and intent, including her calculated phone calls to James and the preparation of the crime scene. The case quickly became more than a murder investigation. The financial crimes uncovered through Sarah's private investigation sparked separate inquiries by banking regulators in multiple countries. HSBC launched an internal audit of all accounts handled by James Mitchell, uncovering irregularities that would have far-reaching implications. As Sarah awaited her next court appearance in a Dubai detention center, the consequences of her actions rippled outward. 2 families were destroyed, a massive financial fraud was exposed, and Dubai's expatriate community was left to grapple with the knowledge that the perfect life they all aspired to might be built on foundations of lies. The true cost of James Mitchell's deception, and Sarah's deadly response to it, was only beginning to become clear. The investigation into James Mitchell's murder quickly evolved into one of Dubai Police's most complex cases. Lieutenant Colonel Ahmed Al-Mazroui, head of the Criminal Investigation Department, assembled an elite task force combining homicide investigators, financial crime specialists, and digital forensics experts. The scope of the investigation expanded far beyond the confines of Villa 42 in Emirates Hills. Captain Fatima Al-Hashemi led the forensics team through an exhaustive analysis of the crime scene. Every blood spatter pattern was mapped and analyzed, creating a detailed reconstruction of the shooting. The evidence supported Sarah's account of the events but revealed something more disturbing: the careful preparation that went into the murder. The plastic sheeting behind the bookshelves wasn't just about containing evidence, Al-Hashemi noted in her report. It showed a level of planning that spoke to long-term premeditation. She had thought about this for weeks, maybe months. The Digital Forensics Unit, headed by Sergeant Omar Al-Fahim, uncovered a treasure trove of evidence from devices seized at both properties. James's multiple phones, laptops, and tablets revealed an intricate system of parallel digital lives. Each device was compartmentalized, with separate email accounts, messaging apps, and cloud storage dedicated to either Sarah's world or Amara's family. He maintained completely separate digital identities, Al-Fahim explained during a task force briefing. Different phones for different lives, different social media accounts, even different Netflix profiles. The level of organization was remarkable. The financial investigation proved even more revealing. Detective Samira Al-Qasimi, seconded from the Financial Crimes Unit, led a team that unraveled James's complex financial web. What they discovered went far beyond managing two households. Evidence pointed to a sophisticated money laundering operation spanning multiple continents. The accounts we found in the Cayman Islands were just the beginning, Al-Qasimi reported. We've identified shell companies in Singapore, Cyprus, and the British Virgin Islands. The total amount of suspicious transactions exceeds $50 million. International cooperation became crucial as the investigation expanded. Dubai police liaised with Interpol, the UK's National Crime Agency, and financial intelligence units in multiple jurisdictions. The investigation revealed connections to known criminal organizations in Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia, suggesting James's banking position had been exploited for more than just personal gain. Witness statements painted conflicting pictures of James Mitchell. Colleagues at HSBC described him as brilliant but private, always maintaining professional distance. His domestic staff from both households provided insights into his carefully managed double life. The Mitchell Villa's housekeeper, Maria Santos, revealed that James had strict rules about his home office. No one was allowed to enter, not even for cleaning. The task force compiled an extensive timeline of James's activities over the past 7 years, cross-referencing travel records, financial transactions, and witness accounts. The pattern that emerged showed a man living his double life with military precision, until Sarah's investigation began to unravel it all. Asset tracking became a major focus as investigators discovered the true extent of James's wealth. Beyond the properties already known, they uncovered investments in art, rare wines, and cryptocurrency. Many of these assets were hidden behind layers of shell companies and trusts, requiring international cooperation to trace. Family interviews provided crucial context. James's sister Emma, interviewed in London, revealed that their father had also led a double life, something James had discovered in his teens. It destroyed our family, she told investigators. I never thought James would follow the same path. The prosecution strategy, led by Chief Prosecutor Hassan al-Shamsi, focused on establishing premeditation. The evidence was compelling. Sarah's methodical investigation, the purchase of the weapon, the preparation of the crime scene, and her calm demeanor after the murder all pointed to a carefully planned execution. However, the defense team, headed by prominent lawyer Aisha Al-Mansouri, built their case around temporary insanity and extreme emotional distress. They argued that the cumulative impact of discovering James's betrayals, combined with the trauma of failed fertility treatments while knowing he had children with another woman, had pushed Sarah to a mental breaking point. Cultural considerations played a significant role in the legal proceedings. The case touched on sensitive aspects of UAE society, polygamy, which is legal under Islamic law but must follow specific procedures, and the expatriate community's often parallel existence with local customs and laws. The court proceedings became a media sensation, with international press following every development. The story resonated globally, touching on themes of betrayal, double lives, and the dark side of expatriate privilege. The New York Times ran a feature titled Death in Dubai, The Perfect Life That Wasn't, while the BBC produced a documentary exploring the cultural and social dimensions of the case. Expert testimonies brought new dimensions to the trial. Forensic psychiatrists debated Sarah's mental state at the time of the murder. Financial experts explained the complexity of James's fraud schemes. Cultural experts provided context about the unique pressures and privileges of Dubai's expatriate banking community. The legal challenges were numerous. The defense fought to exclude evidence of James's financial crimes, arguing it would prejudice the jury against him and distract from the central question of Sarah's culpability. The prosecution countered that understanding the full scope of James's deception was crucial to establishing motive. Public reaction was divided. Many in Dubai's expatriate community sympathized with Sarah, seeing her as a victim of extraordinary betrayal. Others, particularly in the banking sector, worried about the case's implications for Dubai's reputation as a financial hub. The international legal aspects of the case created additional complications. British consular officials were involved due to Sarah's citizenship. HSBC's internal investigation spawned multiple regulatory inquiries. The UAE Central Bank launched a broader investigation into potential banking irregularities. As the case progressed, new revelations continued to emerge. A former colleague of James came forward with information about similar schemes at other banks. Investigators discovered connections between James's financial operations and several high-profile money laundering cases in Asia. The investigation's scope grew to encompass regulatory failures that had allowed James's activities to go undetected for so long. Multiple banks began internal reviews of their compliance procedures. The UAE's financial regulators announced new measures to prevent similar frauds. Sarah's legal team worked to humanize her to the court. They presented evidence of her charitable work in Dubai, her support of women's education initiatives, and her previously unblemished record. Character witnesses described her as kind, professional, and well-respected in her field. The prosecution, however, maintained their portrayal of a woman who had chosen murder over legal remedies. They emphasized the multiple opportunities Sarah had had to report James's crimes to authorities or pursue divorce proceedings. As the case approached its conclusion, it had evolved far beyond a simple murder trial. It had become a mirror reflecting the complexities of expatriate life in Dubai, the pressures of maintaining perfect facades, and the sometimes violent consequences when those facades cracked. The investigation had exposed vulnerabilities in international banking systems, raised questions about cultural integration in expatriate communities, and challenged assumptions about privilege and justice in Dubai's glittering financial district. For the investigators, prosecutors, and defense teams, the case represented a unique confluence of personal tragedy and systemic failure. As they prepared for the trial's final phase, all involved knew that the verdict would have implications far beyond the fate of Sarah Mitchell. The final phase of Sarah Mitchell's trial began on a sweltering Dubai morning in July 2024. The Dubai Criminal Court was packed with international media, legal observers, and members of both the expatriate and local communities. Sarah, noticeably thinner but composed in a conservative black suit, sat quietly as Chief Justice Abdullah Al-Nuaimi prepared to hear final arguments. The prosecution's closing testimony centered on Dr. Rashid Al-Jabri, Dubai's leading forensic psychiatrist, whose evaluation had found Sarah legally sane at the time of the murder. Mrs. Mitchell exhibited clear planning abilities and awareness of consequences, he testified. Her actions showed precision, not panic. This was calculated revenge, not temporary insanity. The defense countered with Dr. Elizabeth Stanford, a British expert in trauma psychology, who painted a picture of cumulative emotional damage. The combination of fertility struggles, discovery of the second family, and financial betrayal created a perfect storm of psychological trauma, she argued. Mrs. Mitchell experienced what we call complex betrayal trauma, leading to a dissociative state during the shooting. The jury selection had been particularly challenging due to the case's high profile. The final panel included 4 Emiratis, 3 Western expatriates, and 2 Asian professionals, reflecting Dubai's diverse professional community. They listened intently as financial expert Samir Al-Rashid detailed the staggering scope of James's fraud. The total impact of Mr. Mitchell's financial crimes exceeds $100 million, Al-Rashid testified. He didn't just betray his wives. He betrayed financial systems across 3 continents. After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Sarah Mitchell was found guilty of second-degree murder, a lesser charge than the first-degree murder the prosecution had sought. The verdict acknowledged the element of premeditation, but considered the extreme emotional circumstances as a mitigating factor. Chief Justice Olnwayme's sentencing statement made international headlines. This court recognizes the extraordinary circumstances that led to this tragedy. However, we cannot condone taking the law into one's own hands. Sarah was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with the possibility of deportation to the UK after serving 10 years. The appeals process began immediately. Sarah's legal team, citing new evidence about James's criminal connections, argued that she had acted in part out of fear for her life. The appeal highlighted previously undisclosed threats James had made when confronted about his second family. The international implications of the case were far-reaching. The British Foreign Office engaged in quiet diplomacy to ensure Sarah would serve her sentence in humane conditions. HSBC faced regulatory scrutiny in multiple jurisdictions, leading to major reforms in their compliance procedures. The case established several legal precedents in UAE law, particularly regarding how courts consider psychological trauma in crimes of passion. It also led to reforms in banking regulations and stricter oversight of expatriate financial professionals. For the families left behind, the aftermath was devastating. Amara, now a single mother of 3, retreated from Dubai's social scene. Her family's influence helped shield the children from media attention, but the psychological impact was profound. The twins, old enough to understand some of what had happened, required extensive counseling. James's assets became the subject of complex international litigation. The UAE Central Bank froze accounts linked to his fraudulent activities, while legitimate assets were claimed by both Sarah's and Amara's legal teams. The process of untangling his financial web would take years. The case triggered significant changes in Dubai's expatriate banking community. Financial institutions implemented stricter background checks and monitoring systems. The UAE Central Bank established new protocols for detecting unusual patterns in international transfers. Cultural implications reverberated through Dubai's society. The case sparked discussions about the intersection of Western and Islamic marriage laws, the role of women in expatriate communities, and the pressures of maintaining social status in Dubai's competitive environment. Support systems emerged in response to the tragedy. The British Business Council established a confidential counselling service for expatriate families. Local women's organisations created support groups for those dealing with marital betrayal and financial abuse. Preventive measures became a priority for both financial and social institutions. Banks implemented new fraud detection systems, while expatriate organisations developed programs to help newcomers navigate cultural and legal complexities. The case became the subject of multiple documentaries and books. BBC's Death in Dubai, The James Mitchell Story, exposed the vulnerabilities in international banking systems. Netflix's Double Life series explored the psychological aspects of living with long-term deception. The lasting effects of the case continued to shape Dubai's legal and social landscape. Law firms reported increased inquiries about international prenuptial agreements. Financial institutions strengthened their compliance departments. Social service organizations developed new programs for supporting expatriate families in crisis. Sarah Mitchell's case became a cautionary tale in Dubai's expatriate community, a reminder that beneath the gleaming facades of success, devastating secrets could lurk. The perfect life she thought she had built with James had been an illusion, but its destruction had real and far-reaching consequences. 5 years after the verdict, a journalist interviewing Sarah in prison asked if she regretted her actions. Her response was telling, "I regret that it came to this. But James destroyed more than just our marriage. He destroyed trust, hope, and the futures of 2 families. Sometimes I wonder if he would have destroyed even more if it hadn't ended when it did." The legacy of the Mitchell case continues to influence Dubai's development as a global financial hub. Stricter regulations, better support systems, and increased awareness of the pressures facing expatriate families all emerged from this tragedy. The perfect facade of expatriate life had cracked, revealing both vulnerabilities and strengths in Dubai's multicultural society. As Dubai continues to attract ambitious professionals from around the world, the Mitchell case serves as a powerful reminder that success built on deception cannot stand, and that the quest for the perfect life can sometimes lead to devastating consequences.